Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hardcore Heroes.
Yeah.
Here
That's stream unmuted.
Okay.
Yes.
Lovely.
All right. So things don't go anywhere with the sexy translator, but
I mean, they go somewhere, but not where you want them to go. You're falling for her faster than you would like to be. She rolled a natural 18 on her charisma checks. That's a modified 33.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I've got it bad.
You've got it worse than you'd like it.
I'm smart though. I know not to stick around and let these things fester. I realize I'm falling for her, so I'm going to get the job done and leave before I catch too many feelings. End up having to give her half or whatever.
Right.
I don't want any of that. So yeah, I'll finish my translating.
Once you reach a level that you are comfortable with, that you've agreed to get to, and you're sort of like wrapping everything up, Chloe says to you in Akuban, which you now speak fairly, decently at least. Nothing fancy, just very casual, conversational Akuban. She says, "Did you give her your real name?"
No.
What name did you give her?
A fake name. I guess I'd just call her. Say my name's Jarrett. Just I think my father's name.
Right. She says to you, "Well, Jarrett, you are the most impressive student I've ever had. You've learned this far faster than I've ever been able to teach it."
Thank you, Chloe. You are quite fantastic yourself.
Oh,
I'm sorry, it's unprofessional. Ignore me.
I wish you the best of luck, and if you ever wish to come back and improve your Akuban or learn other languages, come see me. I speak many.
Thank you, Chloe. And if you find yourself in Drekus, seek me out.
Where would I find you?
I worry this might be a mistake. It's a mistake, but I do feel like going with the RP and taking a risk here and telling her to come to Bontheris if she's in Drekus. She did roll at 80, and I feel like this is a fair consequence. It might come back to haunt me, but I tell her, I live in Bontheris. If you ask around, you'll find me.
Ask for Jarrett in Bontheris.
Yes.
Okay.
Ask at the church.
You're a godly man. That's not something I would have picked up from our conversations.
Not particularly, but the cleric who works there is a good friend of mine, and we spend time together. So if you ask there...
Man of many mysteries, I see.
Well, I try.
Well, have a good day, then.
Thank you.
Jarrett.
I shake her hand.
She shakes yours. I guess you have to pay her some amount of money for a month.
Yeah, probably.
It's probably pretty pricey. I think
probably running low on funds, yeah.
We're probably looking at at least $1.50 a day for 36 days. So let's call it 1.75 times 36. That's about 63 gold.
Okay, 60 gold. We'll call it 70.
Yeah, sure. It's not a ridiculous amount. You're probably pretty low on funds.
I think I'm betting through all my gems, is what it is.
Right. And you've got this book now. What are you going to do?
Okay, how big is it? How long will it take me to read?
It's,
So I can probably read it in a day.
A day or two.
Sure. Okay, so I'll do that then. The town's under siege anyway, so it's not like the king's about to bust in looking for me. Do I catch the king's banners on the army sieging the keep?
Yes, you do see the banners of the House of Sharzin.
All right, so there's a chance that I'm going to be able to sell this to the guy in charge of this town for good something or other, because this is going to be, presumably there's going to be military secrets in here, so I read it while I'm here.
Excellent.
Take a day or two to read it. So I'm looking for stuff about the staff, specifically when they raided the tombs. I think that they moved everything out of the tomb. I think the cleric woman said it was 3 weeks earlier. So it's probably a couple of 3 months ago now. So I read back. I'm going to read the whole thing anyway, but yeah.
Right. So you're going to get an account of all the things that have been happening here. And the journal goes something along the lines of, it starts when how to say it? The interesting information begins with talking about this other king of Kuba, the King Harazim. and what a fuckwit he is, and his incompetence, and he sort of like waffles back and forth on things. He's very much a, oh god, what was his name? What was the guy before Churchill? The prime minister before him? Chamberlain. It's very much a Neville Chamberlain sort of thing, where he's like, oh, maybe we should do this, but I don't know. I'm going to hedge my bets here, and we'll like try and do this other method rather than confronting this directly. And it's all this like pussyfooting around, at least from the author's perspective.
And this is before the old king died,
right,
or is he talking about Boudoir?
He's talking about the old King Boudoir, yeah.
No, Boudoir's dad, right?
Boudoir's dad, right.
Son. Yeah.
Right. He's talking about Boudoir's dad. And he's just like, he's painting him as this terrible figure. And then, one entry is like, joyous day, the king is dead. We didn't have to go through with our plans. It's fantastic. His heirs are all incompetent and haven't really been around. Surely, we'll go, when we have our council meeting, I will be the new king. I'm clearly the only one possible, like, ready for the role. And then the next entry is like, meeting didn't go so well. Apparently the others think I'm dangerous and violent and vindictive and bloodthirsty, but I'll show them. I'll be the king of Akuba, and all of them will be dead in my stead. And then there's some note about how he really envies the queen of Eridon because she's an absolute monarch who does not have to share power, as opposed to the Akuban structure where like the 13 major families all rule and the king just sort of like arbitrates between them, sort of like as a court almost. And how, this is a terrible style. How are you supposed to get anything done? No king will ever have power. It's going to be distributed. It's always just going to be this slow plodding progress, and infighting is going to destroy everything. It's a terrible form of government. You should really just centralize all the power with one good person, and I'm a good person, so that's what I'm going to do when I rule. And then there's an entry about like he's working with this dwarven family that's aligned with him, and they're going to take the throne now. And the next entry talks about, well, they tried to take the throne, but the other families resisted, and now there's a civil war, but we hold the Sandashar, which is the capital, so that's all that matters. And the next entry,
who are the dwarven family?
The dwarven family he's speaking of is a family called Sparksteel.
In Akuba?
In Akuba, yes.
And he said that they were going to be the kings?
No. They were aligning with him.
Right, okay, they're aligning with him.
Yeah. So it seems like the Akuban noble families break down into like 3 different factions, and then there's a few families who don't align with anyone, and they're just like, we're going to do our work, we're just going to keep doing our shit, and we don't want to get involved in the war.
So this guy's aligning with the dwarves?
There's 2 dwarven families, and one of them he's aligning with. His family, Shazarin, used to be in charge of justice. So they were the people that would like post guards everywhere. They would be the people that would run the prisons and the jails and all sorts of things. They had like the most number of soldiers. They're really like the military force. And the dwarves that they're allying with are the dwarves that were in charge of like smithing and armoring. They ran the armories and distributed weapons and like had the rights to sell and maintain gear and to oversee all the other people who could make weapons and armor and like would deal with all of this. So you had like the most militaristic people with all the people who make the weapons, and they're forming like this core I guess we don't want to call it rebellion, but core faction. And they immediately
to clarify, the king he's like a warrior focused. He's not like a magic focused family. Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah, and they take the 3 most important cities in Akuba right away. Within the first month of the war, they've got Sandashar, Abankai, and Talushar.
Okay, so they've got this like peninsula down here.
Right, and this is like where most of the population and most of the resources are. Everything else, not that important,
Okay.
Yeah, Unyaka is pretty useful, but, this is the most important thing. And you find notes in here about one of the families that's in charge of like commerce and sailing and that sort of thing has like all these blockades everywhere, so there's not a lot of commerce or trade coming along, but these 3 cities are all connected by a road, so they don't even need that very much, and they can still fish a little bit off the shore, but they also they don't need to ship the food that was grown here in the peninsula to these other towns, so they're fine. Like, they're losing connection with the outside world, but they're more than self-sufficient, and they're training soldiers, and they're getting ready to conquer everything else, and they're building up their forces. Now, everything's going great until the dwarves have a bit of a problem. You see, this one dwarf, he and his family are having a split. they're not doing so well. The other dwarves are not really excited about this. Let me read something to you. So the head dwarf. Wait, was it the head dwarf?
Of the smithing family.
Yeah. The Théoden Sparksteel was the head of the dwarven family here, the Sparksteel family. And he was not on board with this absolute monarchy idea. He really wanted to keep things as they were, but like put Ramar Shazarin in charge.
Yeah.
And Ramar is not having this. He wants his absolute monarchy, so he executes Théoden and threatens to kill everybody else in the Sparksteel family. And so, the next in line agrees to, in order to save his family, because the Shazarin guy has all the troops. He could wipe the Sparksteels out in an instant if he wanted to. So he agrees to back the king's absolute monarchy to save his people. But his family's not super happy about it, and there's like a split between them, and there comes like this bloody internal civil war within the Sparksteel family itself, where the new heir to the Sparksteel family, Varric Sparksteel. Varric, yeah. He crushes this rebellion within his own family, like killing half of his own family members, imprisoning a bunch of others, and now the Sparksteels and the Shazarins are unified in one front with one purpose, with one leader, with one army that's well-manned, well-equipped, well-trained, with all the resources they need, and they're in this, like, position of power to eventually conquer the rest of Akuba once they can, get all of their resources up and running and properly siege Unyaka, because without taking Unyaka, they can't really get to anything else.
So I get an impression of who his biggest threat is. Which other faction is he most scared of?
He's not concerned with any other factions at all.
Okay, so there's no unified resistance against this guy.
No, all the other people are all split, and they don't have the numbers. Like, maybe the family that was the equestrian class in charge of horse breeding and everything might have been a threat, but not through these hills and not against the numbers. Like, at this point, it's just a numbers game. There's no question. It's just a matter of time, and eventually they will be in charge of everything.
Okay, well, sure. I keep reading, right? This is all not useful to me. I need stuff about the staff, or like future battle plans or future goals would be useful as well.
The only thing in here that even mentions the staff is it says when he came to power and took over the capital, that he had arrested all of anyone that would have been supporting one of these other people. So, and he does specifically mention the family, the honor guards in the cemeteries have even been arrested and removed. And that is the only mark about the cemetery or about the staff. There's nothing in here regarding it whatsoever. And this has got personal notes of every kind. I mean, he's talking about, like, things that are going on in his bedroom with his wife. He talks about everything in this diary. It's really detailed. And yet the staff is never mentioned once. And I think you come away reading this being like, shit, he didn't take it.
Yeah, it's already gone.
Yeah, like, it must have been gone before
Forever.
this. It must have been gone maybe who knows when.
But Balerion said he saw him getting buried.
Yeah. Yeah. So...
How long ago was it that he died? 100 years ago. No.
He died in 721, so about 780 years ago.
Fucking hell.
So yeah. All of this work only to realize he doesn't have the staff.
Okay. So is there stuff in here that would be valuable to his enemies?
Absolutely.
All right. So, I guess then I try and work out who's in charge of this town. If it's been hidden somewhere, maybe it was a false burial. It wasn't where they said it was. Maybe somebody important knows, and I can trade information for this journal.
Right. Okay. So, the only people that would still be alive at this point in time who would have been there in person would be Balerion the Dragon and the Elven Ambassador, which I think Balerion was talking about. Maybe not.
Ooh. No, I don't think so, but that's a good idea.
Yeah. Those
Maybe
would
I
be
can
the
go
only
back and
two living
speak to
people.
Valerian with Project Self this time,
Okay.
so I don't get buried. So one day, the Elven Ambassador is not going to be too bothered about the like if he's buried somewhere else, it might, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that was there. Maybe somebody important does know.
Mhm.
But I'll next day I'll cast Project Self and go into Valerian's lair and try and speak to him.
Right. Let's take a look at Project Self.
It's one of your new spells, I think.
Okay, good. Because I did not see it in the other list. Spells test.php. Project Self. With the closing of their eyes and a snap of their fingers, the caster projects an incorporeal image of themselves somewhere they can see. This projection can see, speak, and hear on behalf of the caster, who must keep their eyes closed for the duration of the spell. Whatever the caster says or does, the projection says or does, the sole exception being the eyes of the projection are open despite the caster's eyes being closed. The projection has AC 10, 0 HP. It can be dispelled by being disrupted with any physical interaction, such as waving a hand through it. The spell works with any form of vision, including spells such as clairvoyance, allowing the caster to clairvoyance into an area and then project themselves there. A lining of silver or lead around the room blocks the spell from being cast into an area and blocks sight to the area from the projection.
Okay, so I think, clairvoyance first into his cave and then Project Self.
Boom! You clairvoyance into the cave, you see a sleeping dragon, you project yourself into the cave, and you are now in a dragon's lair. We should figure out where you are when all of this is going down, though. Like
in my in-room.
In-room in Yaka?
Yeah, in the bed. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, and then once established, I look around, make sure I'm not being chased by any rock elementals.
Certainly.
And, Valerian, it is I, Malachi. I've come to speak with you again.
Valerian, opens one eye and stands up and takes a step forward towards you.
I take a step back.
Hello.
If he comes to touch me, I'll say, I am here, but only as a projected version of myself. We cannot interact physically. But I have a great news and a question for you.
Certainly interesting one.
Since we last spoke of Falstaff and his equipment, I sought out his tomb within Sandershire and it was empty.
What?
There is no one there. No, nothing in the tomb. I thought perhaps the new king had raided it for its valuables, but between you and me, I've got hold of his journal and there's nothing in there about it. I guess it was never there, or are you sure that they buried him there?
I watched him descend into the tomb myself, with my own eyes, which cannot be deceived.
So, could anyone have snuck in there and moved him afterwards?
Certainly.
Do you have any?
I suppose. Do I have what?
Any way to work out where he might be now?
Dragon ponders, leaning forward heavily and scratching his chin with one of his massive claws.
Remember, I told you the fate of the Arcadia is at stake.
I left the day of the funeral. I seem to recall. There was a sphinx getting a little close to my home that I had to go deal with. We had an interesting back and forth about riddles. Have you heard the one? What walks on 4 legs by morning, 2 by day, and 3 by evening?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No. 4 legs day.
4 legs in the morning, 2 in the day, 3 in the evening.
Nope. A sundial?
It is a man. As a child you crawl, as a man you walk, as an elderly man you walk with a cane. I think a wizard of your appreciation ought to know this riddle already. It is
I know it now.
the most
I thought you
classic.
said. I thought you said day.
Day, afternoon, same interpretation.
No, but it's the whole. We're talking of a lifetime here, not a day.
It's a riddle, wizard.
Oh. I of course concede to you on this, great Balerian.
Fine, you just disappoint me.
I'm sorry.
Well, as I said, I left. The elven ambassador to Akuba has been the same one for centuries.
That's interesting. Where does he live?
Well, in Sandashar, of course. You should speak to her. She is 1,000 years old. Well, maybe 1,010 now? I'm not... What year is it? Is it the same year as when we met?
Yes.
Excellent. 1,009 years old then.
Where does she live? In the city? How would I recognize her home? Do you know?
You will find an odd, out-of-place tree in the southern district in Sandashar. There will reside an elderly elf who her name is Bick.
Bick.
B-I-C. Bick.
And she lives in a tree, right? In the south side of town.
Yes. It's a weird tree. It's a sequoia that has been prevented from reaching its full height, but has maintained its massive girth. Like a dwarf. A dwarven sequoia, one could say.
Thank you, Balerian. I will speak with her. I appreciate your counsel. And then I go to touch him and disappear.
All right, you vanish.
Okay. Guess we're going back to the capital city. Hope there's not wanted posters for my face around.
Meanwhile, back in the capital city, the king comes home to find that his drawer doesn't have his journal. And the people who were the only ones in his room all day are questioned. Yeah. It turns out they had to kick someone out because of incompetence, but the king is now very concerned. Who the fuck has his journal? Is it these craftsmen? They have disappeared. Their families wonder what happened to them, and people are out looking for Malachi, but, only two people ever really saw your face, and no one had your name, and it's all very suspicious, but that is like a month ago now, so when you return to the capital...
Hopefully it's fine. I do it as a bird, and I will, I should be able to find this tree, land in it, chirp to the other birds.
Yeah, once you know what to look for, you find the giant sequoia in an instant. You circle this town, and you're like, that's a big-ass short tree. And you flutter down to it, and there's like a little fence around it with a little garden. There's some like large mushrooms and other plants going about, and you see a couple of forest gnomes hanging out in the tree too. Not a lot, just like 2 or 3. And they're just kind of hanging in the tree. Yeah.
I'm coming in polymorphed. I try and get into the tree as a spider or something. And hopefully we'll see the elf and then transform into me.
So you can land in the
branches.
The branches of the tree, and there's a big door at the base of the tree, with little stones leading up to it.
Can I sneak into through the door, in the cracks in the door?
Yeah, you polymorph into a spider and attempt to go underneath the door and find that it's just sort of thick air that's almost soupy. And you'd have to try and swim through it. It's clearly warded in some way. It is a 1,000-year-old elven ambassador in the capital. Well-protected home.
So I can't just walk in?
Yeah, you just have trouble walking in. Okay. You can probably just knock on it if you wanted.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that I'm not completely surrounded by suspicious folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe a couple of garden gnomes, but...
Yeah, there's just some garden gnomes hanging out.
Are they real or are they just statues? I'm not sure. So if someone's watching me, I'll just turn back into me and knock on the door.
You give a knock, and a moment later, an elderly elven woman opens the door and squints at you through her thick spectacles. Hello?
Greetings, Bick. I am a friend of... I look over my shoulder, of Balerian the Brass, and I seek your counsel.
And in which language are you speaking these words?
Elven.
Her eyes blink a few times, and she quickly steps back and welcomes you into her apartment. It's the inside of a tree. It doesn't look like anything is cut or nailed or marked in any way. It's just like the tree has grown to fit everything you could possibly need. Her bed is a hammock strung between two little hooks that just kind of come out of the tree like horns or something. There's a table here that's just like the tree melds down and, into the floor and everything. It's, voodoo elven magic bullshit, but it's interesting and exotic.
Okay, so I speak in hushed tones and I sit down and Vic, the matter at hand is grave. May I speak frankly with you?
She nods.
I don't need to tell you about the dangers facing Eridon. It's my homeland. Those dangers will spread here as well, although it will take the destruction of Dracus and Mistrea before it does, but don't get me wrong. Arcadia is in a grave time, and the time for heroes is now. Someone needs to do something about it.
She nods along with you.
I am seeking out the equipment of a long-dead sorcerer in order to battle the evil powers that plague my homeland. This sorcerer is Falstaff, a friend of Balerion. That's why I spoke with him. And then I lower my tone and say, the Civil War, do you support the king? You can speak freely. I'm not allied to these people.
She pauses, heads over to an area where there's like a small fire, and puts a teapot over the fire, and goes and sits in a chair and scoots another chair towards you and says, sit. Let me think.
Yes.
And she sits there for a good half an hour in silence. And as the water boils, she pours some tea for the both of you and just sits and thinks for far, far too long. But it's, half an hour later, she finally nods and says, the king of Akuba is of little significance. They will come and they will go. The problems that plague Eridon that plague Arcadia are greater than a king.
I agree. I have something that could be useful to the king's enemies. And perhaps for information on what I seek, I could give it to you as a gift, and you may know the right thing to do with it. I'm not interested in Akuban politics.
What do you need from me?
I want to know where Falstaff is really buried. Where his equipment is, his staff.
Is he not buried in his tomb?
He is not. I thought he was, because Balerion said that you and he watched it together. But I did. I examined the tomb, there's nothing there. It's empty. At first I thought maybe the new king had raided it. But I can say now that that's not what's happened.
She pauses and thinks deeply for another half an hour. I think I forgot that she would have asked your name by now. Would you have given it? Honestly,
I tell her my name's Malachi, yeah, and that I'm from Eridon.
Cool. After her thinking, she says, if I can remember my past, Falstaff was entombed, and once the funeral was over, the cemetery was closed for the night, and the Harazim family posted guards everywhere around it to make it clear they would not tolerate any sort of grave robbing. It seems that graves are most often robbed the night they're buried because the loved ones are celebrating and partying and drinking, and it is usually the night they are least well guarded. The Harazim family wanted that not to happen, so they posted guards everywhere and went into mourning and solitude for 2 weeks. But now that you tell me his body is not there, if the cemetery was closed and the family vanished for 2 weeks, it seems to me that would be the time to move.
Yes.
Corpse.
Where would a record of something like that?
Grave, she says, astounded.
Dastardly. Dastardly, these people. I'm sorry, but the Akuban customs, they bear hard on me. It's a strange land.
I recall there was a dwarven family hired to make his tomb that was paid an exorbitant fee of more than 10 times the actual cost of the tomb.
That certainly sounds suspicious.
At the time, I thought it was a show of wealth and a display of pride and honor, but now it sounds like there's something afoot.
Any of these dwarves still alive? Would they have records of this, what they did?
Dwarven lifespans are only a few hundred years. Maybe a great-great-grandson? Or great-great-grandchild? And records! The people of Akuba take very careful notes. And I have found that if one wishes to truly understand what has happened, one does not ask a historian, one asks an accountant.
Yes, it makes sense. Listen, Bick, you're respected in this city. The dwarves that you're talking about, do they live here?
She shakes her head. No, imported from Eridon. I can't remember their family name.
Ah.
But...
Eridonian dwarves, say.
Yes. I am confident that the records would still be in the Harazim family library, which has been folded into the capital now that the Harazim family has ascended the throne. The keep in their archives should have contractual records.
You're talking about the keep in town here, not Harazim, right? It's another family, isn't it?
Well, it's another family now, but the Harazim family used to rule.
Ah, okay.
Up
so
until
you think
yesterday, it seems.
It might be in the library within the keep?
Not the library, the archives. Where the library is for active readings, the archives are for ancient books and texts. That's buried deep within the castle, underground.
Do you have access to this library? To this archive?
I could gain access.
I'm asking a lot of you for somebody I've just met. Why don't I show you what I have and you can judge its worth? I'm taking a great risk in showing you this, and when you see what it is, you'll have probably heard of it. But I can trust you as you trusted me. And I take the book out of my backpack and hand it to her.
Oh, okay. You pull the book out and hand it to her, and she flips through it and looks a little surprised. It's like, oh my. Yes, the king has been looking for this.
Maybe you could say you found it and give it back to him, or maybe you could give it to someone you favor to replace him. If you want it, it's yours if you can help me find out the location of what happened to Falstaff.
She nods. And asks you to wait a moment as she starts to read the book. And after maybe an hour, you get the impression that she's going to just sit here and read the entire thing while you wait.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll wait. I'm not leaving her alone with it.
Right. Like the sun begins to go down, the day begins to pass. She makes a motion, and there's a second hammock on the other side of the room that she can pull out for you, and goes, sleep, rest. And she has the forest gnomes bring you guys food and drink, and she seems very content just to sit here and read this book for however long it takes, and have you just wait in the tree with her.
That's fine.
You know how elves are; they're long-lived and they take their time with everything.
Like dragons.
Yeah. Malachi's once again left waiting and waiting. But by the next day, she has finished reading the journal. Thanks you for giving it to her, saying, you have trusted me with something important, and I will seek the best answer for Arcadia with what I do with this.
Listen to me, Bick. I don't want to lower the tone here, but I'll wait here, if I may. while you try and get the information I need. If you betray me on this, know that I got hold of this book relatively easily, and I could see you. Things would not go well for you if you were to betray me. Let's put it like that. I hope I can trust you.
Are you threatening me?
I'm not threatening you. I'm just reminding you of the seriousness of this situation. I won't be killed just because you decide to betray me.
Dear wizard, I have lived for 1,000 years. I have seen kings come and go, empires rise and fall, dragons be born and be slain, oceans recede, mountains raise. If I were to betray you, it would not be something you would recognize until it was too late. But you do not need to worry. I have no cause to bring you harm.
I put a hand on her wrist and I say, "Thank you. I got the impression I could trust you. Will you be? I feel nervous in this town, given what I did. Do you think you can find out the information quickly, or will it take some time?"
I shall go to the capital in the morning and speak with them and see if I cannot put my hands on this book. In the meantime, let me tell you what I know of Falstaff the Sorcerer.
Yes, please.
As I'm sure you know, but I'll tell you just in case you don't, he is famed for creating a way of tracking spellcasters via their blood. This is a closely guarded secret. I have been in this city for hundreds and hundreds of years, and I have yet to learn how it is that this is done. He also founded the Harazim family. Before he came, they were nobody. He was a man of caution to the point of paranoia. But he was assassinated, so I don't know if it would really be paranoia. He was very concerned about who was coming after him, and very concerned about in whose hands power lay. He always wanted to make sure that power stayed out of the hands of those who would do wrong with it, which is why his tracking system is such a closely guarded secret. He learned ancient languages so he could write his notes in dead languages long dead, and would then cover them up with arcane spells of his own. Once upon a time, I happened upon him in his room, chatting while he was making notes, and cast a glance at the book. I recognized an ancient, long-dead form of Elven, but it was scrambled and gibberish. It made no sense. So it must have been in a cipher or magically altered in some way. He's a very careful man. It makes sense that upon his death he would take his most valuable possessions and hide them somewhere where bad men would not find them.
Indeed. And at that point, I'd say that I spoke with Balerion at length about this, and he agreed that whilst Falstaff himself was a very, like you said, paranoid man, very careful man, Balerion and I both think that unearthing these artifacts now, in such a time of need, is what he would have wanted.
Maybe. Depends on the sort of man you are. Are you someone who would do good for the world? Or would your good intentions pave the way to hell?
I only do what must be done. I'll vanquish the demons in Heatstroke, send them back where they came, and send this shadow dragon back to the shadow plane.
Are
Once
these
that's
your
done,
goals?
I nod.
And when it's done?
When it's done, I'll retire. I just, I can't leave things like this. I can't see Eridon completely destroyed. It's my home, my entire life. I feel somehow linked to it, like if only I could have done more to stop it happening in the first place.
She seems satisfied with you. And I feel you're speaking honestly. This is not a ruse that you're pulling over her.
No, that's not.
Okay. I will dig around in the records. I will see if I cannot find you something. Do stay here. I believe you are a wanted man. They may not know your name, but your face is known to the palace guards.
Yes, I imagined it might be. One of them got a good look at me.
Has used a read memory spell, and you may find wanted posters with your face drawn upon them. There's even an innkeeper who claims to have seen you.
Right, well, I'll keep a low profile then. Thank you for allowing me to stay here. Okay.
She will leave. And I think it becomes apparent to Malachi once she walks out that she probably knew who you were and the book that you had stolen when she first saw you at the door and let you in anyway.
Okay. Well, yeah. I am very, very worried that she's just going to go and get the guards right now. I mean, she might not, but I need to be ready if she does. So, is there a window in the tree?
No.
Polymorph doesn't last long enough, really, to... Maybe what I'll do is I'll cast invisibility, leave the tree, climb up the tree, and sit in the tree invisible. And I'll just show back up when she comes back on her own without the guards. But if she comes with guards, then I can leave.
All right. You go to leave, and you find the door locked.
Okay. Right then. So I make sure I learn teleport today.
All right, so she leaves, and you go to learn spells?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Maybe 8 hours later, she returns.
On her own?
On her own. The door opens, and she steps in, puts down a bag, and she might be an elf, but she is ancient, and she moves a little bit slowly, so she, sets down the bag, goes and puts some water on the boil, waits for the tea to be made, comes and pours the tea for you and her, gets, some biscotti, brings it over, hands you some, then, slowly opens the bag and pulls out this ledger, that's an ancient book with, cracked leather that's falling apart and flaking, and slides it gently across the table, leaving little debris of leather all on the ground, on the table where it slides, and hands this over to you and says, "This is the financial records of House Harazim from the year 710 to 730."
Wow. Okay. So, do you remember the date of the funeral?
She nods and flips open the book and turns it to a page that talks about the Pickmore clan. It was a group of dwarves called the Pickmore clan that came from Keldaram in Eridon. These are famed stoneworkers, known all throughout the world for ages. In fact, never mind, that's not actually part of what we need to talk about. And in the ledger, it mentions that there is a cost, and the tomb is listed as costing 100 million copper. And at the same time, you know that is a ridiculous price to pay for this shit. For that tiny tomb that you saw, that 20 by 20 room, even though it's marble and dwarven craftsmanship, 100 million copper is
no way,
10 or 100 times the cost of what that would ever possibly need.
So it could be that it's got a secret entrance in the tomb that they built afterwards, and that could be why it's so expensive. Or it could be that they moved the body and built another tomb somewhere else. Right.
And she mentions to you as you look up after reading that line, keep reading. And in it, a couple of pages later, there's expense reports from the dwarves, and it's all the financial records that come with a major transaction like this. Pages and pages of documents. And one of the expense reports covers expenses from Roxas.
Where's that?
Let's take a look on the world map at where Roxas is. You are an educated man and well-traveled. You would know where this is right away.
I'm actually a map maker, so yeah, definitely would know.
Roxas is here. Let me drag you to it, though, so you can see it. Right here.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's not too far from Balerion.
It's not, but also, if you'll notice, dwarves coming from Keldoram, which is, way north, there is no reason to go through Roxas if you're trying to get to Sandashar. In fact, it is out of your way to go to Roxas.
Yeah.
Right? If you were leaving from Keldoram, you'd go by ship, or even if you went by land, you would come, way the fuck down and over and like this way. But that's a ridiculous route, and even that doesn't have what they were stopping for in Roxas, which is an expense report covering a huge amount of rations and tools and supplies, like all these different crafting supplies from Roxas, picks and axes and chisels and hammers and an incredible amount of food.
All right, so maybe they built a different tomb around Roxas.
Yeah,
or somewhere near there. Okay, well that sounds like a goal. There might be like mines in there or something like that we could take a look at. I say to Bick, thank you, Bick. I will follow these leads in Roxas and see what I can find. I trust that the King's Journal is safe with you and will go to good use.
When the time is right, I shall... what is the old saying? The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world?
Something like that, yes. Strike when the iron is hot. Yes, well, it's been nice knowing you. I hope to see you again one day, but I will be gone from this place for some time. It seems it's become quite hostile to my interests.
I have a good 30 to 80 years left in my life. I hope to see you again.
Well, yeah, we're working on the same timeline there, so maybe I will. I shake her hand.
She shakes yours.
Polymorph and Aldir. Do I read anything about that in the King's Journal? Is this place free? Like, could I get... Well, actually, that wouldn't really take me anywhere I need to go.
No.
It's the best way to get to Roxas. I can't get back to Yetel because of the blockade.
Right, there are naval blockades everywhere right now.
So I could fly to the edge of the desert, spend the day there, and then sleep one night in the desert in a hidden lodge, and then keep flying. I could do 2 polymorph spells a day. So that gets me over 6 hours worth of flying at 48 speed.
Okay.
I've not got stone skin. It'd be safe to just do it slowly. How many... Sorry. How long do we think we can go in a polymorph spell? Let's see.
2 turns per level. You're level 9, so 20 minutes times 9 is 180 minutes.
Yeah, so 3 hours.
3 hours, and you can probably go at speed, 48 at most in a polymorph?
Yeah, 48,
version?
yeah.
So that is 14 miles an hour times 3 hours per casting is 42 miles per casting. And it is 220 miles. So 220 divided by, let's call it 42. It's going to be 6 castings basically to get you to Roxas.
So 6 days, but then to sleep in a lodge every night, it's like 100 GP gem. It's very expensive. Maybe the better thing to do is to try and get a ship to somewhere safe. Like
you're not going to find a ship out of Sandashar, though.
No.
Sandashar is blockaded, too.
So maybe I do fly to Aldir and try and get a ship from there to Drunsbar, and then fly across the Hogwind Plains to Roxas. Does that sound reasonable? Is Aldir out of the war? It's not blockaded.
Aldir is owned by the family that runs the naval blockades.
So it's probably okay then.
Yeah.
All right, then. So I'll do that.
All right. You can fly to Aldir.
Yeah.
And catch a ship from there that will take you to Drunsbar. Let me just check on the status of Aldir at this point in time. There were rumors of plague there, but that's not what we're looking for. I don't need to worry about the plague in Aldir.
No. Although I would like to avoid the plague if possible.
I think we're near the beginning of August right now. Let's see.
Yeah.
Gotta check my Akuban Knights notes. When was Aldir free? From Renta. Aldir is Edge of Desert, Pike's Point, leave for Syro. Okay, so that's July. Aldir is still being controlled. Perfect, perfect. All right, yeah. You can absolutely get to Aldir and grab a ship that will take you. You're probably not going to have one that goes directly to Drunsbar. I think you're going to have to like take a ship. You're actually going to have to probably take a ship all the way to like Keldaram, the dwarven town, and then like take a ship back. Because Drunsbar is a tiny ass town. Or maybe there's something going to either Shelton or Drunsbar.
Maybe I could just like fly off the side of the ship when the time's right.
Oh yeah,
like,
you could. As the ship is coming by Drunsbar, you know, because it'll pass this point up here, and then you can just like, as it passes Shelton, you could fly off and go to Shelton and grab a boat from Shelton to Drunsbar, no problem.
Okay,
I think
and
that's
then
the solution.
Go from Drunsbar to Roxas.
Okay, so that is going to take you. Let's just do a quick. It's gonna be.
It's gonna be a while.
That's 650 miles by sea. Okay, so it's gonna be somewhere along the lines, like in the middle of August.
Okay.
You've been on a ship for a long time here, for a couple of weeks. You know, sailing around this, sailing back over here. Then how do you want to get from Drunsbar to Roxas? Are you going to walk? Or are you going to fly? It's 71 miles. It'll take you 2 days of flying.
I ask in Drunsbar how deadly the Hogwind plains are. They're okay. So I'll...
yeah. There's a wyvern there. That's the only thing that you need to be worried about.
Yeah, it should be okay with the wyvern. Phantom Steed across. I think it's movement speed 36, but it'll last...
Oh, then you'll be there, no
hours.
problem. Yeah. Perfect. So I think we can just skip all the travel.
Yeah.
And you can arrive in Roxas. And why don't we take our last break here?
Yeah, all right.
Let's take our last break here. And when we come back, we will see what is going on in Roxas and maybe bring us in for a landing. See you guys on the other side of the break. Bye-bye.